Namaskar, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 20th anniversary celebration of Bandhan. And what better way to celebrate this important milestone than have luminaries throw light on the various aspects of the development agenda. To start, I would now like to invite the founder of Bandhan, Mr. Chandra Shekhar Ghosh, who will take us through the story of Bandhan. Mr. Ghosh.
Namaskar. Good afternoon, Professor Banerjee, Mr. Puri, distinguished guests joining this webinar, members of the media fraternity, ladies and gentlemen. It has been 20 years. Wow. It seems as if it was just last night that I resigned from my job and announced to my family that I would start on my own and help those that are overlooked by all. From that night in 1999 to now, when I look back at the journey of Bandhan, it seems like an unbelievable fictional plot. Yet, at some level, I think I always knew that Bandhan could bridge the gap between the underprivileged and their empowerment, both economic and the social. Through my experience of having worked with various NGOs, I had seen poverty firsthand. I had also seen the enterprising spirit of this population. They wanted to do big things in life, but they did not have any support. Most of them ended up borrowing money from private money lenders and falling into their trap. Someone needed to support them and help them pull themselves out of poverty and the trap of private money lenders. On April 11, 2001, Bandhan started as an NGO with the objective of women empowerment and poverty alleviation, not through donation, but through sustainable livelihood creations. At the heart of Bandhan were the values that would help it practice empathy and prudence. Values built to make us partners to our customers while maintaining very high standard of ethics and the business excellence. I still remember those early days when people found it hard to believe that a firm would be interested in just extending loan for small business to the poor women. It was really tough to convince women to have a courage of starting on their own business. We are also often mistaken to be a cheat fund or a Ponzi scheme, and few of our officers and offices were even get out. Local panchayats had boycotts us initially at a few places. Financial institutions kept turning down our proposals for loans because the family believed that we are in a risky business and that the repayment credibility of our customer was not strong enough so that they are not interested to funding in that time. True to our conviction. It was only a matter of time, and soon enough, we started getting recognized. Our customers exemplify what true credibility is, and they are the reason for Bandhan's success. They have demolished myths around their credit worthiness and willingness to repay. Thanks to the customer of Bandhan and the gap in formal credit and the demand for our credit kept increasing, and we are able to scale up our operations. I have always believed that small is beautiful, but big is necessary. Scaling up was the only way to create large scale impact. During this, the process of scaling up, we were able to meet a wide cross section of the rural poor. We saw gaps not only in formal credit availability, but also in education, health, hygiene, employment generation, and a number of other social factors. We understood that we needed to drive social upliftment alongside financial upliftment. Thus, Bandhan focused on the overall empowerment and upliftment of the communities. Our efforts have been and will continue to focus on impacting on just financial indicators of development, but social indicators as well. What gives us the greatest joy is to witness the impact that Bandhan has been able to create on ground and the role the organization has played in transforming lives. Just the other day, I was visiting one of my banking units, which is the last week, and I happened to meet Niru Rai. Niru has been our microcredit customer for the last 6 years. She lost her husband and was looking for support to earn a livelihood. She started a small business of manufacturing lozenges with a loan from Bandhan. He got some experience to manufacturing lozenges from her husband, who worked in a factory of lozenge manufacturing. Today, she is an entrepreneur in the true sense of the word. Her factory produces 3 quintals of lozenges every day, and she supplies this produce to nearby districts. What's more, she has employed 15 women in her factories. They are earning their livelihood from her enterprise. This is a story lots of story have in our country. I recall another customer who I speak to some time back. Her name is Shapna Das. Her education has been only till 8th class. With the loan from Bandhan, he started a small unit that manufactured the small paper envelope to be used by medicine shops for the medicines they sell. In 3 years, she employed 13 people, of which 2 were MBAs. When I asked her, what do the MBAs do? She said that they take care of sales and marketing, and the rest 11 manufacture the envelopes. Imagine a lady who has studied just till 8, employs MBA to run her business. Such has been our partnership with our customer. These are just 2 examples of the many customers who exemplary social change at scale. They have not just transformed their lives, but their employees as well. Another kind of example, if we see that just a couple of weeks before, we know that some of the states are declared by the government not to pay the installment. Customer come to the office to repay the installment, And the way some of the person have been attacked hard and asked to not to pay because government will be like to repay to this the lenders, and that my borrower and reacted on that. So you can repay my loan, but you cannot give me the loan in future to run my business. So that I like to continue the relationship with Bandhan to future to get the loan to run my business and to elevate my poverty. This is I'm proud of this type of customer who understand their own business. And this is the impact across the country of India. This brings me to the employment generation that Bandhan has been able to achieve. We have more than 1 crore 70 lakhs customer. If each borrower employs just one person in her business, it is more than 1 crore 70 lakhs job created. One must also keep in mind that more than 70% of Bandhan Bank's outlets are in the rural and semi-urban India, where creation of employment opportunities is the need of our country. Bandhan Bank has more than 50,000 employees on roll, and Bandhan-Konnagar, which is a development program running by this entity, has more than 3,000 employees. While employment generation was not one of the parameters we were chasing when we started Bandhan, it surely is one of the sweet byproduct. Bandhan's success story and the impact it has created has been possible due to the committed and resilient employees. My heart fills with pride to see what the Bandhan team has put together and the impact that they continue to create. Recently, on my visit to one of the banking outlets, the team of relationship officer was returning from the field in the evening. Normally, they are returned back in the time of 2 p.m. And that day I saw that they are returning back in the evening, means in the before the 6 p.m. In the heart of the month of April, wearing a mask, these brave hearts are completely dedicated to the service of the customer. I asked one of them how his day was and what kept him in the field till the end of the day. He happened to mention that there was an irate customer and he had gone to find a solution to the problem and counseling to those customers. I empathized with him and asked if the customer was too harsh on him. What I saw and heard in reply made me emotional. He just smiled and said, "This is a part of my job, sir. Like in a family, the seniors shows the displeasure. Similarly, our customers show displeasure when something goes wrong. It is our duty to help them, counseling them, and smile through it." This is the attitude of the Bandhan team members. And this attitude is the reason for our incredible journey. It is nothing but it privileged that I get to work with them. I feel proud of my team. Let's talk about the other side of Bandhan. True and meaningful development of a nation happens when economic development and social development work hand in hand. While we are the fifth largest economy, we are ranked 131 in United Nations Development Index, or we can say HDI, falling among countries like Namibia and Honduras. HDI has three primary dimensions. First, a long and healthy life. Second, access to education. And third, a decent standard of living. At Bandhan, we are community development intervention, which aim to improve this dimension primarily in rural and semi-urban areas. Start with a development program. Bandhan Health Program aims at creating large-scale awareness about healthy living in rural and semi-urban areas. The program puts more focus on expecting mothers of infants, and adolescent girls, as these are the most at risk profiles in these areas. And the women of the household do a better job at establishing the right practices at home. The health volunteers of the program who are adequately trained conducted health forums monthly basis and also visit individual household to check progress. The health program also has interventions like distribution of health kits, linkage and referral services, and sanitization facilities, among others. Bandhan has also set up 60 purified drinking water plants in areas where availability of safe drinking water is inadequate. At Bandhan, we are also working towards establishing a hospital which will cater to all kinds of general requirement but focus more on diabetes, which is very much people are suffering. And poor people are not very much aware about it. Initially, the hospital would cater to outpatients, including complete diagnostic facility, along with the daycare services. With experience and with the demand, we plan to expand it to a 200-bed hospital in about 5 years of time. We are committed to serve the holistic health needs of the communities. This hospital will be like to open in the next year. HDI second indicator, access to education, is addressed as various level of Bandhan. There is a challenge in our society, access in education and quality of education. On these the two objectives, we find out on that the primary level dropout rate in our country is high. If we go to the rural and semi-urban areas, it is higher than the national average. So we are committed to partner meritorious students from not so privileged background in their journey of education from pre-primary to graduation and even post-graduation. Under Bandhan education program, non-formal schools have been set up where children from underprivileged backgrounds gets access to quality free education from pre-primary to class 3. After completing class 3, children get admitted to government school. Teachers are also picked up from the same community and given proper training to deliver quality education to the students. We have observed that After the children move out of the non-formal schools, their progress and journey is very difficult to track. Among them are children who are extremely bright and who could do very well in their lives if groomed properly. To enable them to continue their journey of quality education, we have a set of 7 formal schools which are affiliated to the CBSE. Here they receive education till standard 10 and then standard 12 as on date. More than 14,000 students study in this school. The school will be open from the next year. We are currently working towards establishing Bandhan University for higher education. Meritorious students from the Bandhan Academy will be offered admission to the Bandhan University. This institution will aim at creating future leaders and policy makers who will be equipped with all the skills and knowledge to create large-scale social impact on ground by serving various communities. The third dimension of HDI, decent standard of living, has been Bandhan's key reason to exist. We started with the objective of helping women establish sustainable livelihood for themselves and is doing so, help their families move up the social strata. With Bandhan's microcredit, we have been able to transform the lives and the standards of living of crore of women and their families. In addition to this, we run a development program called Targeting the Hardcore Poor, or it's mean in the THP. In this the program, the poorest of the poor go through a 24 months intervention. They are given grants in the form of assets, and these assets help them create sustainable livelihood. During the program, the beneficiaries receive holistic training and helps them run their enterprise well. The beneficiaries are also encouraged to start a alternate source of livelihood so that any disruption in one does not impact their lives significantly. It is a matter of pride and privilege for us that we had Professor Abhijit Banerjee conduct impact assessment studies on TSP. His findings were very encouraging and helped us strengthen the program further. I must mention about the special TSP beneficiary from a village in Murshidabad, in West Bengal. She has a beggar. She used to beg from door to door for money and for food. She was identified and inducted into the program in around 2009. She was trained on the vocation and business that she chose. Today, the same lady has a 2-story building of her own in that village and employs people to run their business. I must point out at no point in time in TSP do we aim to move a beneficiary to become a customer of the bank. Our objective is upliftment, upgradation of the beneficiaries. We train them to the completely independent and they are not bound by anything at all, not even the choice of their banking partner. And this type of beneficiaries, the total cost of cost is needed in a 40,000 rupees for 2 years to uplift their life as an entrepreneur. And I saw that after that, they are not asking the NEREGA any funding from the government. They are self-reliant. I feel that this is the best model. We can be alleviate the poverty in our country. Another program linked to standard of living is employing the unemployment program. As the name suggests, through this program, we skill 10 plus 2 pass outs and graduate year to improve their employability. After completing the program, the students get inducted in various reputed institutes or start their own business in the domain they trained in with the income that they generate after completion of their respective courses. The youth is able to improve not just their own standard of living, but also of their families. Another program aimed at improving the standard of living is financial literacy program. As the name suggested, this intervention of financial literacy and inclusion assists rural women to move from sustenance to the sustainable growth path. Sorry. This program encourages participants to become financially aware and gain confidence. Once the awareness of financial matter is built, it empowers them to better plan their household finance, thereby helping enhance their standard of living. They can open their account, they can transact with the bank in a digitally and manually, which can be helped the people financially inclusion in more. First development program of Bandhan THP was started in 2006, and since then, through all the development intervention, we have touched the lives of more than 30 lakhs families in the country. What's the next for Bandhan? While Bandhan's number indicate that we have created larger scale impact, there is much more ground to cover. India is a large country. We are consistently evaluating opportunities to diversify existing programs and to launch new programs aimed at holistic development of community. Bandhan is not the story of a bank, NGO, or about microcredit or deposit or anything singular. Bandhan is the story of the sum total of all that we do that drive holistic development, development of individuals and communities. It has been 20 years, but we are just getting started. We need to knock on every household door, identify where and what intervention is needed, and not rest till we make change and transformation happen throughout the nation. There will be changes, there will be lots of challenges in the path ahead, and we are equipped to navigate those as we have known many occasions in these 20 years. We are firmly committed on the very reason Bandhan was born in 2001. We'll continue to create large-scale impact and partner people in their upliftment, financial and social. Thank you all for your time. I wish your health, happiness, and hope you will continue to support Bandhan through its journey onwards and upwards. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ghosh. It is always a pleasure to hear the Bandhan story. What amazing achievements, what outstanding impact, and what a vision. Thank you for speaking to us this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to invite our chief guest and our keynote speaker, Nobel Laureate, Professor Abhijit Vinayak Banerjee. Professor Banerjee.
Namaskar, Dada.
Namaskar, namaskar. Thank you. Namaskar to everyone. And thank you for having me on this occasion. It's as someone who has actually been associated with Bandhan almost from the beginning. I think we first met in 2006. So I also take pride in Bandhan's where Bandhan has arrived. It's been truly a privilege to be associated with it for the last 15 years, and I'm grateful for the opportunities it has given me to observe both what Bandhan does and the lives of the people that it touches. And this I will try to, in this talk, I'll try to expand a little bit about what I think are the takeaways from that experience. But let me start by saying something that I think it's worth articulating for people, especially people who are working in Bandhan, which is that I think it's extremely difficult to be an NGO like Bandhan-Konnagar. That this is not an easy task, and this is not. And I think I say that with the appropriate, it's sort of weight. I think it's a difficult task, and the reason why it's difficult, to think about the reason why it's difficult, I think is worth going back to this fact that one thing that an NGO doesn't do is make money. And what's nice about making money, one you could criticize it in many ways, is it's straightforward. You know when you made money, you had paid some interest, you paid some wages, you paid some other costs, and then what's left is your money. And so in some sense, profits are a very clean metric of success. That's the attraction of profits. And it's a metric of success that you have an accountant, they measure that the profits, and you're done. At some level, you don't need any more guidance to know what success constitutes. That makes it very easy for organizations to pursue profits, because it's some level we see this year we were successful, we have profits. Last year we were not so successful, we didn't have so much profits. There is a very straightforward mapping from profits to the outcome we were looking for, which is, and therefore we can, when you make money, you are rewarded when you don't make money, maybe you're rewarded less. It makes the calculus of what am I doing, is it meaningful, much more straightforward. The challenge of working for an NGO, and I think I'm going to say an NGO like Bandhan, I'll come back to why I say that in a bit, is precisely that the outcome is complex. We don't, it's not a number like profit. It's something very broad, multidimensional, often unobserved. The welfare of people. The welfare of people is something that we don't directly observe. We might see the smile on their faces, but we don't know whether they're actually well off. So we're always looking for strategies to get at it. We're looking for environmental improvement. Environmental improvement is something that is not, this is not I'm now speaking about the whole NGO movement. Environmental improvement is just something that, it's so many aspects of it. Which one do we want to pursue? And that makes it hard to know when we are succeeding. This is partly why I think there's a natural connection between NGOs and academics. Academics like me, one of the rewards for being associated with NGO is you learn the real complexity of measuring success. It's a lot of my work in work life has been dedicated to measuring what succeeds. But to do that, you need to know what constitutes success. And there are really two separate problems there. One problem is that we don't really actually know how to measure the outcome. So I'll give you an example, not from Bandhan, because it doesn't particularly flatter the organization, but I think it's an interesting example. And then I'll come back to Bandhan for the rest of my talk. So this is a place where there was a lot of environmental degradation, and the claim was that if you just put barriers around the land, then the goats don't come and graze, and so then the grass grows, and then that allows other plants to then have a root there. So the environmental degradation can be prevented by putting fences around the land. And I went and saw that. I saw that there was one piece of land which had fences around it, and there was beautiful green grass and some plants now being planted there. And all around that were these desolate pieces of overgrazed land. And so I said, okay, wow, that's a miracle. And then I was talking to somebody who was an expert in measurement in that area. And he said, but do you realize that after all, goats have to eat something? What do they eat? So and how much do they eat? And then when and to know that, you have to realize that even though the places where the goats have been grazing have only 2 inches of land grass now, sometimes it grows to 4 inches and the goats eat it. So you'll have to somehow find a way to figure out all the grass that was eaten by the goats over the last, years, to see whether this is a success or not. And at that point, I realized that I was not able to do it, and I gave up. But it was just the complexity is always very real. And when we worked with Bandhan, we were trying to measure something extremely important and fundamental, but very complicated, which is the well-being of these women who were being inducted into the targeting the hardcore poor program that Mr. Ghosh just mentioned. So it was a real challenge to just know what constitutes welfare. Now, there was a second challenge, and that's the challenge that I think a lot of my work is associated with, which is that, and how do you know that you've actually done something? So these women, 2 years ago, they were begging. Now they are not begging anymore. They are a little bit better off, but maybe they would have been better off even if you didn't do anything. That's what sometimes is called the problem of the counterfactual. How do you know that you were responsible for the change? Now, when you are, so maybe others would have done it. Maybe other NGOs would have done it. Maybe the government has a program which would have already helped them, and you didn't do anything extra. Now, that's not a problem for a private firm. Private firm says, I made money. I don't care if other people lost money as a result. That's not my problem. My problem is I made money. And if I made money, that's success. If I didn't make money, that's failure. It's very straightforward. Whereas when I'm thinking about social welfare, then if I did something that helped my these people I'm serving, but help them less than they would have been helped if the government had they had joined the government program, then indeed I have made them worse off, not better off. So there is some way in which we need to know what the counterfactual is, what would have happened if we didn't do what we did. And to know that, we need to have a what what we do is we do a randomized control trial, which is we this is what we did with Bandhan back in 2007. Before Bandhan started the program in these villages, what we did was we selected, we worked, we went to the village with Bandhan, and there was a discussion of who are the poorest of the poor. These were very poor villages in Murshidabad, and so they were not. Nobody was rich, but even the poor people in the villages said, "No, those people, they are really poor." So those people were identified, and then because this was just a pilot, only half of them were included in the program. The other half was not included, but we followed them, and then we see how much of a difference it makes. So this was the randomized control trial. We chose them randomly so that the people who were chosen to get the program were no different from the people who didn't get it. So that way we were sure that what we are learning is the impact of the program. And then there was, as I was saying, there was a challenge of measuring outcomes, and there were many outcomes we measured. And I think reassuringly, all of them lined up. This was, let's say, I will tell you the whole story, but after 18 months, we did a test and all the outcomes were lined up. We learned that the people were, they were consuming more, about, I think, 18% more. Their incomes were higher. They were working harder. This is important because there's always this worry that if you give people a quote unquote a freebie, they will become lazy. They were working harder. They were happier. They were less likely to complain about ill health, etc. So this was clearly. Fortunately, everything we measured kind of lined up, so we didn't have to worry so much about the problem of measurement. And that's a tribute to the program that it did so well. But I think that we could have had a situation where that was not true. So this was the first and our first step. And I'll tell you the rest of the story as I go. But I want to say at this point, it was what also became clear to us was that the Bandhan experience was kind of unique. And one of the reasons it was unique is that, the reason why it was unique, the internet sometimes is a little dodgy here, was that unlike many NGOs, Bandhan was very secure in what it wanted to do. As Mr. Ghosh said, they wanted to deliver welfare. The whole project is delivering welfare. And in that, they were not worried about how they were perceived. So this program was, I think was the first, place where maybe Bandhan got international exposure. But in a sense, I remember from those first meetings when we were reporting these results, that it was very clear to me that the Bandhan actually didn't so much care about that. And this is very important, because a second challenge of being an NGO is how do you make a mark in the world? And there are many ways to do it, but the usual way to do it is to have some, say that we are doing something unique, something very different. And Bandhan's narrative, even at that point, was very clear. They were saying, look, we're doing something good. We got this from BRAC. BRAC was the innovator of this program. That's fine. Our goal is not to take credit for what we invented, but to actually do good. And that was very much of the flavor of Bandhan that I think attracted me from the beginning. Is that they really were not concerned in joining that conversation about are we being innovative, are we being doing new things. We're doing what we think is the right thing, and that's a deeply different philosophical position than many other good organizations who are very concerned with trying to do something different. And Bandhan has never taken that view. They've done microcredit like everybody else, but they do it better. The goal is not to do new thing, but to do what works and do it well. And I think that's always been one of their important commitments. The third reason why being an NGO like Bandhan is important is that success is slow. It takes a while. It takes time to get there, and that I yes, after 18 months we saw success in this THP program. But how do we assure people that will continue? How do we know that this will be not reversed by something else? The forces of the market, the forces of maybe a organizational failure of people's indiscipline, whatever. This will. How do we know it continues? And I think the third, and I think pleasure of working with Bandhan is whenever we went back to Mr. Ghosh and said, look, I think we should get more data, demonstrate that it's really sustainable. I have often had this, people are often nervous. We have already had a success. Why do another test? I've never had that experience with Bandhan. I always had the opposite. Yes, okay, let's do one more. So we did, after 18 months, we did measurement at 3 years, at 7 years, and at 10 years. And that makes just the data that we generated unique. Very few organizations have generated data like that. Data that you follow the treatment people, the people who got the program, the people who didn't, over 10 years. And when you do that, you find that, in fact, the impact of the program continued to improve over this period. This was from between year 3 and year 18 months and 3 years, it sort of stays flat. And between 3 years and 7 years, the program actually becomes better. So now the treatment group is now 25% better off. Their income is 25% higher. Their consumption is 25% higher. So things continue to improve. And then that improvement stays between year 7 and year 10. So they continue to be 25% better off. This is something that I think it took courage for Bandhan to say, look, we care about sustainability, so we will measure it. And if it shows that it's not sustained, we'll deal with it. There was never the pushback that, well, don't we have enough data? Let's declare success and walk away. That's the third difficult challenge of being an NGO. NGO like Bandhan takes the compulsion of being responsible with evidence very seriously. The fourth and I think last very important challenge is that, in the end, unlike a profit-making business, it's very hard for an NGO to say, okay, we will expand, we will go to scale by just building more factories. It's not a matter of building more factories. We're working in different places, there are different funding sources, there are different local institutional contexts. So while there was success, Bandhan had to become comfortable with the idea of how to make sure that success gets scaled, reaches a much larger number of people. And for that, they had to be prepared to be innovative in multiple ways. They had to take on the challenge, for example, of working with governments, working with governments in Rajasthan, in Jharkhand, in Bihar, different modes of working with governments, training governments in the program, working with government organizations. So very much the government doesn't. The scaling cannot happen by Bandhan becoming an organization in Rajasthan. It has to happen through the adoption of this model in Rajasthan. And so Bandhan has, the reason why this model is in so many states is partly in Odisha as well, is because Bandhan has taken on the responsibility of helping the scaling in whatever way it needs. And that requires both a certain self-abnegation, a certain recognition that you may not get the same credit. The government will take credit maybe for the program, or somebody else will take the credit, but it's not a matter of getting credit, it's a matter of doing good. And I think that general philosophy has empowered Bandhan to do this, to take on this process of first developing the prototype, then scaling it in the way it needs to be scaled all over the country. Now, what the payoff from this, of course, if you do it well, this is why this is so important, is enormous. It has, I think that one of the great benefits of doing these long-term followed up trials with Bandhan is that we've learned a set of fundamental lessons about how to fight poverty. I think these lessons are critical, and they make us much more optimistic about the potential to do more. The first lesson, as I said, is that the impact is sustained over 10 years. I want to say that and say that, if you asked a lot of experts about the poor 10, 20 years ago, they would say, well, they're poor, they probably have problems, they're probably not very responsible, they'll just waste the money, they won't be able to sustain it. And you see that they not only sustain it, they actually, the second thing we learn by following them up is that they actually become creative. So we don't see them just doing, so Bandhan, most of the assets people got were either were livestock. But if you look at the sources of the difference between those who get the livestock and the others, is not just livestock. They, after a while, they take the money from the livestock and they starting new businesses. Those businesses make money. The families grow older, and when the families grow older, their young children turn into young men and women, and then the question arises: what's the next step? And then again we see that in fact the people who got the original livestock, are behaving differently. They're sending their children to earn a living elsewhere in India, to cities, but instead of sending them to Kolkata, they're sending them to Mumbai, they're sending them to Surat, they're sending them to Kochi. They're sending them further away, they're making more money, and that's why they are still richer. It is, in other words, it's not just that they, Bandhan put them with some assets, they stuck to those assets. This liberated them to be creative. And they are now not just that they are better off, they're also better off in being more creative. That to me is really the icing on the cake. That this is not just that they are doing better, they're also embrace their good luck and they're running, they're going further. The third, I think, important lesson from this is that there is just no evidence that getting assets or getting the freebies makes people lazy. I think this is an ideology that is often used to push down anti-poverty programs, that you shouldn't give them too much or they'll become lazy. We see no evidence of that. If anything, they work harder than the ones who didn't get it. They are consistently, they're migrating further, they're doing more to earn money. The last point I wanted to make before to end is that the as a result of being able to document all these processes, there is now a worldwide policy interest in the THP program. And this is there's a whole part of the World Bank which is constantly inviting me to do something on this program, to give a talk on this program. And that this is the evidence, of course, not just from Bandhan. We there was a set of studies which started at the same time as the study in with Bandhan, one in Bangladesh, one in Pakistan, one in Ethiopia, one in Ghana, one in Guatemala, and one in Peru, and all of them showed positive results. And there were follow-ups that again found positive results. The follow-ups after 7 years in Bangladesh, and so it's the accretion of these positive results, not just Bandhan's work, but that attitude was, of being open to evidence, being open to careful measurement, created credibility that is so valuable. At this point, we are, I think, the lots of the world institutions, the UN, World Bank, etc., OECD, they all sort of sold on the idea that this is one program that is a great success. And I think that in that, since especially for me in particular, Bandhan's data was always the first data we got, the best data we got. It's been a big part of how the credibility got built. And now I think we really have, as a result of these 15 years of work, thanks to Bandhan, we've now been able to build a global tool for fighting poverty. And for that and for everything you do, I congratulate Bandhan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Banerjee, for your views. Always a pleasure hearing you speak about this subject that you're so passionate about. Professor Banerjee, we have a few questions from members of the audience, and I'll just take a couple of them for you. The first question, one-line question, but I think it's a very important question. Is the fight against poverty easier or more complicated in a more globalized world?
So I don't know that I mean, I think that depends on which poverty we're talking about. So what the globalized world has done is it creates new forms of risk. And we've sort of, we see that in the pandemic. We see, the things move very fast. The British variant arrives and upends all our hopes of getting out of the pandemic. The world is connected. It creates new forms of risk. That risk is not necessarily particularly concentrated among the poorest of the poor. So it's a risk. It's a risk for the economy, and when we have, I would say, policies, the policy response is not calibrated. Like I think the way the lockdown was done was not the right way to do it. It was done too early, too hard, too rigid. I think that then you get massive ripple effects on a lot of people. So I think that I think the globalized world is one where there are lots of risks. Are we able to deal with those risks if the resources are coming with the globalization? I think eventually, I think it's worth saying that India has been a beneficiary of globalization. We are actually, our exports have grown faster than most countries from the early 90s till today. So I think we are one of the beneficiaries of globalization. I do see that that's increased our risk, and people who have been exposed to particular, farmers who grew a particular crop, the price can collapse. So there's lots of risk, but it seems to me that the right answer is not that it should be globalization should be stopped to help the poor, but rather we should create mitigation mechanisms. So in a sense, the Bandhan's work is a part of that mitigation to create new skills, for example, is a very important part of that mitigation. So if we're in a globalized world, we'll need to constantly up our skills, because it soon will be that Bangladesh will be producing something we were going to produce, or Ghana will be producing it, and therefore we won't be able to produce it, we won't be competitive, and we need to learn new skills. So new skills are going to be a big part of that narrative, and that's why I think institutions that are committed to doing a good job on skilling are a very important part of that narrative. But just there are many mitigation mechanisms that we need to build. And part of our, I would say, more limited success has been because we have paid less attention to the mitigation mechanisms than we should have. We should be, from the beginning, we should have built better mechanisms for mitigating the results of globalization. And I would say we haven't paid, we left that mostly to NGOs and others, and didn't really, it was only in the mid 2000s that we started to think about Narega and other programs, which were basically designed to, well or not, but at least designed to generate better mitigation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Professor Banerjee. I'd just take one last question. And this is linked to the model that Bandhan follows. The question being, Bandhan's experience underscore the impact of financial empowerment of women in fighting poverty. So the positive impact of empowering women. Is that what you have experienced in the other parts of the world as well through your work that you've done?
So that's a complicated question. So I mean, I think the word empowering is a good word, precisely because I think it doesn't say enriching. So I do think that one of the things that we have to remember is that I think the core narrative that microcredit makes people makes people richer is sort of goes against our basic intuition about credit. We sort of when I borrow money to buy a house. That doesn't make me richer; it makes me poorer. I could have stayed in a smaller house, and I think that's true of many people. Many people take loans not because they want to become richer, but because they want to have a better life. They want to have a nice wedding for their daughter. They want to have a television, a refrigerator, buy a nice phone for their child, whatever. They want to do something. Consumption, there's no crime in consumption. Consumption is how we get welfare often. And so I don't want to, so I think when the word empowering is important, and we do find evidence that microcredit loans transform the people's purchasing. People tend to move towards buying more durables, fixing their houses, buying more. Now, then there is a fraction of the population who also gets richer. But that's not. I think it's careful. One should be careful to use the word empowering rather than enriching, because I think many of these people, the median person doesn't get richer according to our evidence. It doesn't get richer as a result of microcredit. But they're still better off. They need the money. They bought something that they wanted. They're happier. Those are all valuable outcomes. And maybe because they're happier, they also now all of them are more willing to work at they're not starting a business. They're just working harder at their job to make more money so that they can take out another loan and buy that bigger TV that they wanted or whatever. So I want to distinguish between, I think, the relatively, I would say, naive idea that this will make everybody richer from the idea that this will make some people richer. We do find evidence that it makes a certain fraction of the population much richer. But then most of the people, it doesn't make richer. It just makes them able to consume the way they want to consume. And those are all possibly desirable objectives. One should also worry about credit. Always one should worry about credit. That's one reason to have objective measurement, is that some people might take credit that they can't sustain and become worse off. And we don't find much evidence of that, but I don't see why one should be concerned about that. That it's not a given that credit will make everybody richer. It would be great if it happens, but if it doesn't happen, we need to worry about it. It's a social outcome, and society needs to be concerned about these things. So the answer is yes, we find that, but I wanted to be careful in actually saying what we find.
Thank you, Professor Banerjee, for your time today and for your views on the development agenda in India. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure listening to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we now thank you, Professor Banerjee. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to another luminary who's joined us for this, the 20th anniversary of Bandhan. It's time to welcome our guest of honor, the Chairman and Managing Director of ITC Limited, Mr. Sanjiv Puri. Mr. Puri, the stage is all yours.
Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh, Professor Banerjee, Team Bandhan Bank and Team Bandhan-Konnagar, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. At the outset, Mr. Ghosh, may I thank you for inviting me. It's indeed a pleasure and a privilege to have the opportunity to share some perspective on this momentous occasion. May I at the outset congratulate you and your team for the remarkable journey traversed over the last 2 decades. It is indeed very inspiring to see what started off as a not-for-profit enterprise to empower the underprivileged section of society. And then we heard very insightful comments on this from Professor Banerjee just a little while back. So it's indeed a commendable journey that is morphed from a non-for-profit organization to a microfinance into a full-scale bank, which has now a robust customer base. But at the same time, it maintains the heart with which the whole enterprise started, of being able to make a difference to society, of being able to help in elevating poverty, in being able to empower the underprivileged sections of society. So that is indeed a commendable journey. I would also like to congratulate the team at Bandhan-Konnagar for the tremendous work that's happened over the decades in livelihood creation, in health, in education, in skill development and financial literacy. And as we heard just a short while back from Professor Banerjee, this has had a remarkable impact in transforming the lives of those people who are facing enormous difficulty. So once again, congratulations. To my mind, this in fact embodies the true spirit that I believe enterprises must have. Enterprise must exist not merely for an economic purpose, but also must have a social purpose. And I think a successful enterprise, a sign of a great enterprise is an enterprise that is able to blend the two together. And I think this and Bandhan Bank is indeed a testimony to this whole philosophy and an exemplar to the whole world. And we in ITC are privileged. We feel very proud to have been associated with Bandhan-Konnagar and participate and make a small and humble contribution to the Women Empowerment Program, where we have assisted along with Bandhan-Konnagar certain women from the most underprivileged sections of society. There are about 30,000 women who have benefited, who are today empowered, have independence, and are living a life of dignity. And we have taken inspiration from that, and on our own are doing some more. So totally we've empowered about 75,000 women, taking inspiration from the work of Bandhan Bank. Now the topic that has been set for the celebration of the 2 decades of Bandhan Bank's and Bandhan-Konnagar's journey is about preparing the agenda for tomorrow's development. I think what Bandhan Bank has done really, and what Bandhan-Konnagar has done, really embodies the philosophy or the tenet in which the developmental agenda for the future has to be made. And the pandemic has no doubt reinforced this aspect. Let me step back a little and look at how the world has evolved. Now, over decades, the manner in which the world has made economic progress, it is very clear that this model of growth is no more sustainable. It is not going to lead us to the desired result of creating a life of dignity and a sustainable future for everybody on the earth. This manner of progress has exploited the planet's resources. In fact, the situation is so serious so that I might add that if this whole challenge of depleting natural resources is not arrested and the trend is not reversed, we will very soon be left with a barren climate, a barren planet that is going to choke future growth. And the evidence of this is right there in front of us. You know, these issues of climate change, for example, are not issues of future. These are issues that all of us are facing today. And this is manifested in the extreme weather events we witness across the world: cyclones, hurricanes, floods, droughts, bushfires. You know, the massive Amazon forests that were carbon sinks have become massive carbon emitters. Glaciers are melting, sea levels are rising. Last year alone, or rather in the year 2019 alone, the economic loss on account of this was a whooping $165 billion. And in fact, the World Economic Forum looks at the climate risk among the top 10 risks to global progress. India has more than its share of challenges on account of this. We've witnessed the extreme weather events in India. As per the Global Climate Risk Index, India is 5th on the index. Since 1990, we've had 1,600 extreme weather events, that is 1 in 5 days. Sea levels have risen by 8.5 centimeters in the last 50 years. And India, as you know, has a huge coastline. Some of the very important centers of economic development and townships are on the coastline. And if this trend were to continue, the prognosis is very grim. For example, wheat yields could drop by as much as 75%. 21 of the top cities, of the top 30 cities in India, could face water shortages by 2030. Amongst the world's most polluted cities, 14 are in India. So we do have a serious environmental challenge, serious issue of natural resources depleting. And whilst this is so, I think the world still has not been able to address the issue of livelihood, address the issue of social inequity. These challenges continue, if I may say, in fact, are getting accentuated. In fact, the pandemic has certainly accentuated that. There are estimates saying that another 200 million livelihoods could be lost on account of this, taking the total unemployment to a billion people. And even before the pandemic, the issue of livelihood and social equity was a very serious one and was even recognized at the World Economic Forum. And India also mirrors the global trend. Now, let us look at this in the context of the growing population in the world. By 2050, we're going to have nearly 10 billion people on this planet. India is soon going to be home to 1.5 billion people. Now, what does this mean? The challenge is multiplied because we have to deal with the issue of livelihood, food security, fiber security, energy security, water security for a much larger population base. And we have to do it in a situation where the natural resources are getting depleted at a rapid rate. So it is indeed a serious challenge, and it is in this context that we have to look for and prepare for tomorrow's development agenda. We have all gone through the pandemic. The pandemic has challenged the world. A serious health crisis became a livelihood crisis. But I think there are some learnings. As I always said, black swan events are always occasions to sit back, to rewire thought and action, and to reimagine the future. I think, to my mind, three lessons which offer hope for the future are emerging. I think first and foremost, you see, as the pandemic unfolded, for the first time, the world saw nature heal itself. Right in India, we could see clear waters. We could see migratory birds return. We could see birds chirping. We could see pollution vanish. So it reinforces the belief that if we do the right actions, we can reverse the trend. And the awareness of this aspect of sustainability has certainly heightened during the pandemic. Second is we have seen the fault lines, the social fault lines in society, and there is a greater awareness, and I believe it should lead to a greater commitment to this whole need for inclusive growth. And third, what has emerged as a powerful tool to transform the world are the digital technologies. Now, digital technologies have always had hope and promise for social empowerment. And we have witnessed, what does not happen in decades. We have seen it happen in months and weeks. And I will give you a very interesting anecdote. ITC works with Niti Aayog in 27 aspirational districts to empower 2 million farmers, to double farmer incomes. And during the pandemic period, when the lockdown happened, the entire farmer empowerment happened on digital mode, through apps, through WhatsApp, through webinars like this, and successfully, because the progress on income enhancement as per the program continued and the milestones were achieved. And I think we are fortunate that the Honorable Prime Minister thought of Digital India much earlier. So we as a society were much better prepared to adapt ourselves and make progress through the digital technologies. So this is a very important tool that has emerged. And as we look forward to the future, I think I'm truly, and all of us, I think, are truly inspired. It's a very timely clarion call by the Honorable Prime Minister for an Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is about an India that is sustainable, inclusive, an India that is strong and resilient. It has enterprises and a society that is even more resilient than it is today. So that is an inspirational call, and I think it truly captures what we need to do to reimagine the future. Because the future certainly needs to embody the principles of sustainability and inclusivity, and leverage technology, leverage digital as a tool to make progress. And I think there is a lot of opportunity, which I will touch upon as we go along. And it is in this context, I think the role of enterprises is very important. We in ITC, and I personally, have always believed that enterprises have both an economic and social purpose. It is the responsibility of enterprises to simultaneously create economic, environmental, and social capital. It cannot be only economic progress at the cost of others. And it is eminently possible to do so. I can say so by our own examples. And Bandhan Bank, Bandhan-Konnagar is a very fine example of this tenet. And the way to do it is that the environmental and social pieces must not be bolt-ons to corporate strategy, but must be integral to the enterprise's strategy, must be the DNA of the organization. And it is with that philosophy that I think Bandhan Bank has done what it has done. And I can even say what ITC has done is also with that philosophy, and I will narrate some examples. So no doubt, we need to get back livelihoods. We need to get back jobs. We need to build back better with sustainability. We need to get back investments, and we need to get back to the circle of consumption, investment, employment in a fashion that is sustainable and inclusive. So in India's context, given the challenges of livelihood, I think there are certain sectors that are very critical, and I will touch upon one just to explain the context and what kind of tools and solutions exist for that. And the sector that I like to touch upon is really agriculture and the wood-based industry. Agriculture, as you know, is the lifeline of the economy. Nearly half of the workforce is part of agriculture, but that accounts for just about 17% of the gross value add, indicating the challenges of poverty and farm incomes. And not only that, we have serious challenges of sustainability of this sector, because India is a water-stressed country. 54% of India is water-stressed. 90% of the fresh water resources are absorbed by agriculture. So we do have challenges of productivity, farm income, sustainability, but there is also opportunity, because India has the largest arable land in the world. However, we only have a very tiny share of the global trade on agriculture, just 2.5%. And there is tremendous opportunity there. In fact, National Geographic has estimated some time back that in the next 4 decades, the world, all the farmers in the world have to produce as much food as all the farmers in the world have produced in the last 8,000 years. So there is a tremendous need, because populations will go up, incomes will rise, nutrition levels will improve. So there is a greater need for agriculture, greater need for value-added agriculture, and that's the opportunity for us. And given the economic dependence on this sector, I think it becomes pivotal for this sector to transform. And the transformation of this sector with rising farm incomes can actually spur a virtuous cycle of investment, employment, growth, preceded by consumption. And it can also lead to connected industries like food processing and wood-based industries that have also enormous economic multipliers. So what is it that we need to do in agriculture? First and foremost, I think we need to strengthen competitiveness of our agri-value chains so that we are able to provide, we are able to produce cost efficiently, we are able to produce quality that is better than the world, we are able to produce attribute-specific produce in line with the global requirements. So productivity has to come in at the back end, quality has to come in at the back end, and the value chains have to transform from a supply-driven ecosystem to a demand-driven ecosystem. I believe the recent policy interventions of the government, like the FPOs, cluster-based business organizations, agri-infrastructure funds, all give us the tools to strengthen the back end. And the market linkages that have also got created through the reforms enable the chains, value chains, to become demand-driven, to get the value chain players, brand owners, and the farmers to collaborate, avoid the wastages, bring in efficiencies, and enhance competitiveness of this sector. And it is indeed eminently possible to do so. And I will give you an example, our own example. We were part of a multi-stakeholder collaboration between the government, the farmers, input companies, and ourselves as value chain players with over 200,000 farmers. This was a pilot that we did at scale, aligned to the Prime Minister's vision of doubling farmer incomes. And in a couple of years' time, when we did the survey again, we found that 30,000 farmers had doubled incomes. Others had improved between 30 to 70%, depending on the absorption of the new ways of working. And I'm quite hopeful that when we do the next survey, we will have even a larger number that would have doubled the incomes. And it is actually this learning that we are currently taking to 1 million farmers and also working with Niti Aayog to empower another 2 million farmers. So we need to do this. We have all the tools in place. We need to orchestrate multi-stakeholder partnerships to make this a reality. The second I think we need to bring in digital technologies right at the heart of agriculture. We need to create a phygital system where we do benefit from the latest technologies, digital technologies that are available. At the same time, we are creating efficient input market linkages. We are creating the micro ecosystem for delivery of inputs and demonstration to the farmers. And this actually can truly transform agriculture in a short span of time. And I'll give you an example here. We have this ITC eChopal, which was born at a time when the internet was not the way it is today. But now we have launched eChopal 4.0, which brings to the farmer customized solutions leveraging the state-of-the-art agri-tech solutions that are available today. It's a solution aggregator. And in partnership with the government of Andhra Pradesh, we use this as a pilot to demonstrate the benefit to empower chili farmers. So in the season that is just concluding, farmer incomes have jumped by about 32%. This is the power of digital technology that's in one season. And I'm glad that the government is also pursuing this agenda rigorously. The Agriculture Ministry is working on an agri stack that will enable the multiplication of some efforts. We on our part have set a bold agenda to empower 10 million farmers from the 4 million that we have today. The third area that we need to tackle is sustainability. We need to deal with the issues of water resources. We need to strengthen climate resilience for the agriculture value chains. So a recent pilot that we have done, which is across 1,600 villages, which we call the climate smart villages, where climate smart agriculture practices were taught to the farmers. There, not only did farmer incomes go up by a third, but GHG emissions reduced by 45%, and the soil conditions have improved. So creating resilience for the future. And as far as water is concerned, I think both the demand side and supply side management are critical. And this is again eminently possible. Our own pilots at scale have demonstrated across 5 crops 25 to 45% reduction. Our community water harvesting structure also explains another interesting model to bring in more water resources for agriculture. This today provides soil and moisture conservation to about 1 million acres. There are 16,000 such water harvesting structure. So these are the three pillars that I believe that we need to pursue in agriculture. And I do believe there is a need also to create green bonds for agriculture to provide the financing for the adaptation and migration to climate smart villages, because these migrations do pose certain risks. Similarly, the wood-based value chain has enormous economic multipliers. Our own fiber plantations connected to our Bhadrachalam paper mill, and 2 decades back, India did not have access to its own fiber. We were importing. It's an agroforestry model in over 800,000 acres, creates employment for 150 million man days of employment. That's the potential it creates, because a lot of jobs are created at the farm and forest end and less right in the factories itself. And this has enormous opportunities, because not only does it create the wood-based industries, has a lot of economic multipliers, but it's a huge carbon sink. It also helps us mitigate the issues of sustainability. Similarly, the policy interventions that the government did on agarbatti industry recently has seen a lot of impetus on the plantations as also in the manufacturing. And when done, we will see about 22 million days of employment on an annualized basis created. And agarbatti, remember, is a small industry. This is just to indicate the kind of potential these kind of industries have. And India has about 30 million hectares of wasteland, which we can convert. These will become carbon sink. These can create employment. We can also create biofuels. and there's a lot of basic wood-based products, more than 50,000 crores that India imports today, and I believe there's no reason why we cannot develop this in India. That's an enormous opportunities. So I believe these are some pathways that we could pursue as we think about tomorrow. And as I said earlier, that it has always been ITC's endeavor to integrate sustainability and inclusiveness in the manner that in which we work, and these were some examples. Similarly, we do have a very vibrant practice of the circular economy, where we, through our well-being out of waste program, we collect waste from over 10 million citizens, and we first educate everybody on waste segregation, make sure that what goes to the landfill is very limited, and then we use this waste for creating recycled paperboard in our facilities. We have 41% of our energy is through renewable sources. Our vision is to take it to about 50%. And I'm sure all of you will share this pride that as an Indian company, we're the only company in the world to be carbon positive, water positive, solid waste recycling positive for 15, 18, and 13 years in a row. Our value chains empower 6 million livelihoods. Very recently, the ITC Windsor Manor in Bangalore became the world's first net zero carbon building. So it's, in a way, all this is weaved into the way we work, very much like the way Bandhan Bank has orchestrated its business model and its evolution over the years. And hearing about Bandhan Bank's journey from Professor Banerjee and reading about it before I came here, I was quite motivated to share our journey also. And I hope the example that Bandhan Bank has created is going to inspire much more action from enterprises in this direction. I think the impact that Bandhan Bank has created is tremendous. And once again, I congratulate you, wish you the very best. And as I end, may I also say that, we have all really inherited the planet from our forefathers. I think we have a responsibility to hand it to the next generation in a much better situation than we have received it, so that for the future generations, we are able to contribute towards sustainable growth, to a life of dignity, to a life of social equity, and a life that is more secure and sustainable. And thank you, Mr. Ghosh, for inviting me. It's been indeed a pleasure, and I wish you and the team all the very best on your remarkable journey. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Puri. Thank you so much. Very, very important message there. Let's make it right for our children and their children. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us, Mr. Puri. It is now time for me to invite back on camera Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh, who is going to propose the vote of thanks. Mr. Ghosh.
Thank you. This is a very great day for us. And I am giving the thank you, Professor Banerjee and Mr. Puri, for their time and very valuable comments as given on that. I agree with Mr. Puri mentioned about it. What we received the word from our grandfather or earlier generation will be like to give the better world to the next generation. So that may be that will be like to work all of us on that. The climate will be like to make as a favorable for all of us on that. So thank you, Mr. Puri, and thank you, Mr. Banerjee. And again, thank you, because I just called in that the Sunday to Mr. Puri that if he will give the time, and he has given the time immediate on that. And the same way I sent one WhatsApp message to Professor Banerjee, and he also accepted this the invitation. We are very grateful today because of these two renowned personality has given the time today in our 20th anniversary day. So So I am coming on that. It is believed and learning from all the speakers, and I also believe this success is not just because of an individual. The journey has received unstinted support from various governments, regulators, donors, bankers, friends from the media, all well wishers, our board members, all employees of the Bandhan Group and their families. We drive inspiration. We got the inspiration from all of you. And of course, we derive the inspiration from our customers and beneficiaries. I wish to take these opportunities to thank them all today. Without you all, this would not have been possible. I hope all of you will continue to support us and inspire us in our journey ahead. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, my colleague in this conference.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the webinar on Bandhan's 20th anniversary. We are, if not more, as excited as we were 20 years ago on this journey that we have embarked on empowering communities, and we are steadfast on making that happen as we go along. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening ahead. Stay safe, stay healthy. Namaskar.